Today, we are excited to welcome Brad Whitehead, Managing Director of Cleveland's Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund. Brad is a familiar face on the Cleveland economic development scene. He founded and subsequently led the Fund for Our Economic Future for over 16 years. He stepped down as president of the fund in 2020 and worked with the Brookings Institution Metropolitan Policy Program as a non-resident senior fellow on economic development projects across the United States. He also remained active on economic development and business growth projects throughout Northeast Ohio, including extensive work with Mayor Bibb and his team on a variety of economic development and American Rescue Plan issues. Brad can be found most mornings along the Cuyahoga River, where he is an active rower, and he maintains an executive coaching practice and is involved in a number of civic organizations. We are also proud to have him as a senior fellow alum of our Advanced Leadership Institute class of 2018. Please welcome Brad Whitehead.
Great, thank you, Rachel, and hello to everybody. And I am excited to talk to you today about the Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund. And if you're like me today, you may be feeling a little bit disoriented, kind of what's going on in the world and what's going on in the United States. The good news is what we're going to be talking about today actually doesn't know a political boundary. What we're doing at the Site Readiness Fund, as you'll hear in a minute, is something that Republicans love, Democrats love, and so no matter what else you think is going on right now, this work proceeds, and it's good. So what I want to do today is to describe a little bit about the Good Jobs Fund and what it is we do and why it is we're so excited. I think the bottom line here is that, look, we're one of the newest organizations in town, but we're tackling one of the oldest problems that has been around, which is, when you think of the Rust Belt, it's typically those disinvested properties in urban areas that you think about. And they've been there for so long. And the question is why? And I am just so proud of what Mayor Bibb and the Cleveland City Council have done of stepping up to try to take all of this on. And so I'll describe a bit about what that is. The opportunity is that, look, if we can sort out what to do with our disinvested brownfields, there is a huge opportunity in the national and the global economy right now. We're in the midst of what is a second industrial revolution, whether that's in the reinvention of the semiconductor industry, the energy industry, the transportation industry, what's going on with defense spending, artificial intelligence, and the like. For the longest time, it just felt like we weren't really that innovative as a national economy, but there's just been this explosion of activity. And then layer on top of that, the fact that there is so much reshoring going on. It's just been this massive investment in the U.S. economy, but sadly, the Cleveland economy hasn't really been a part of that, but we could be, because of the 11,000 acres of Cleveland that is zoned industrial. About 4,000 to 5,000 of those sit vacant, which is roughly an area the size of Shaker Heights. The rub is those acres that are out there right now don't really match what the market wants. So every week I get kind of inquiries from Jobs Ohio and others saying, hey, we got a company that's looking for a 15-acre parcel, or we've got a company that's anxious to expand, but we don't have sites that are ready to go. So while we have all that land, it is typically too small, dirty, and too far away from the market. And so therefore, there's not going to be a private sector solution to the sorts of things we're going to do. And so as a result, these properties just kind of sit around year after year, decade after decade. And we kind of grew accustomed to that, but it's been particularly painful in more recent years when you've seen the tremendous growth in places like Columbus and Cincinnati, and it feels like we haven't been a part of that. And there may be many reasons for that, but one of the primary reasons is that we just haven't had sites that match the market needs and are ready to go. And that's why Mayor Bibb and City Council created the Site Readiness for Good Jobs Fund. And the idea is, how do we go out and aggregate and clean up and bring to market some of these industrial sites so that we can bring good family-sustaining jobs into the city of Cleveland? And they set forth for us a goal of saying, look, between now and 2040, can you reactivate 1,000 acres of disinvested industrial property? And in so doing, the goal of creating 25,000 jobs, making sure we revitalize the neighborhoods in which those sites are located to build community wealth and support environmental sustainability. And so that's what they did. And we got going in August of last year. And Mayor Bibb and council took $50 million from their American Rescue Plan allocation and charged us with leveraging that with another $50 million. And to go out and find properties. And the things that we're looking for is we're trying to aggregate land that can be more than 10 acres, ideally more than 30 acres, that we're focused on manufacturing jobs. We're looking to get 10 to 15 or more good jobs, those that pay a family-sustaining wage per acre. And look, we're not trying to replace the private sector, but our goal is to get those properties to the point that they're ready for the private sector. So we do pre-development work. We get it from a brownfield to a greenfield status. And our goal isn't to go out and get market-based returns because, as I said before, market-based returns weren't there. Our goal is basically to get our money out so that we can reinvest it in the next round of properties. And that's what we're up to. Ultimately, if you take those 4,000 acres and say it cost around $400,000 an acre to clean it up, basically we've got an opportunity here that is going to require investment ultimately of some $1 to $2 billion to get all this done. And we think this kind of model that we have of recycling the money is going to allow us to do that. We're a tiny, small, but mighty staff. There's 3 of us at the Site Readiness Fund who do our work, and we're able to do that because of partnerships that we have. We work very closely with our operational partner, which is the Cuyahoga Land Bank. And then we are part and parcel of work at the City of Cleveland, and then with all these other organizations you see on the screen who are instrumental to the work that we're doing. Let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. Here is a property, an area where we've been working in Cleveland. You can get yourself oriented there. And there's about a 30-plus acre parcel kind of on the near east side that we're dealing with. It's affectionately known as the Ruins. Some of you may know that. It was where Scarlett Johansson's filmed one of the scenes from the Avengers. And so we've been working here in the Ruins. And to give you an idea of the kind of thing that we have to do this, basically that 30-acre site consists of some 125 parcels. And in order to pull those together to make it interesting to the market, that means that we have to, in some cases, get buildings out of state forfeiture. So that kind of nasty building I saw on you saw on the previous page is something that was had gone into a state foreclosure. It was a former Westinghouse building. Sometimes we receive land through donations. So a couple of buildings across the street were donated by a private owner. Sometimes we purchase property. Sometimes there's people that are doing nasty things. There's a particular landowner here who's been dumping construction waste for years and years and years. It's 3 stories tall with construction waste, which isn't legal. And so we're working with the Land Bank and the Ohio Attorney General and the City of Cleveland to take action against that owner so that they'll assign the property to us. And then there's oftentimes a lot of land that's been either sitting in the city or county land bank, which can come into the property. So in this one, there was a whole slew of parcels that was available for this instance. And then we may have to rezone the land, and then we go out and we try to get state funding to help us do the cleanup, the demolition of buildings, and the like. And so you can see why maybe the private market wouldn't take care of it themselves, but that if you could pull it off, imagine having a 30-plus acre site that is less than 2 miles from downtown, less than 2 miles from University Circle, along three different transit lines, accessible by rail and proximate to interstates. So we see this as a tremendous opportunity of the kinds of things that we can do. So where are we? We've been going since August. We have that goal of 1,000 acres. We've been spending most of our time over the last year trying to gather sites. So far, or gather properties. So far, we've got about 11 sites spread across the city that comprise some 328 acres. That's in almost 600 different parcels. And most of them are still dirty. Most of them still have buildings and kind of crap in the ground. But three of them are very close to be ready for market. Uh, One of the things that we're very proud of, and you see this on the screen here, is we purchased the Wellman Seaver Morgan building at 7,000 Central Avenue, which is just this massive structure that is embedded in the central neighborhood. That is some footprint is some 183,000 square feet. This was the home of where a lot of the modern steel industry was created at the turn of the last century. We picked up that property and are now working on revitalizing it. Here you see some of the drawings of what we hope to do with this building, and we're out talking to companies about locating in the business. Locating in this structure. We have a couple of business parks under development. And then, part of what we're doing is trying to respond to inquiries that we have, but we're also trying to see if we can create some markets as well. So we're working closely with Eric Diamond, who was the founder of the Central Kitchen, to see whether we could create a home address for food production in Cleveland. It's one of the most active areas and steady areas of growth in Ohio, and food production is something Cleveland is very good at. And so can we create a food production hub? And we're also working closely with a number of players about whether we could attract a modular home factory to come to the city of Cleveland and set up shop on one of our sites. One of the things that we're actively working with the mayor on as well, you'll recall that during his last election, he spent a lot of time talking about out-of-state landlords of residential properties. Well, the same damn thing occurs with industrial properties. And there are a number of what we call zombie properties, which are properties that are held by out-of-state companies. Usually it's a company that purchased a company that purchased a company that is sitting on a piece of land that it's more economic for them to just sit on that land than it is to sell it because of potential environmental liabilities. So we're creating tools and instruments where we can help those companies get released from their environmental liability if they donate the property to us, and then we'll take on the task of cleaning it up. And then finally, I note that we're out also trying to leverage a lot of additional funding. And we've met with a lot of receptivity in the state and federal government, and have already leveraged a darn near $10 million to do this work. And we have several other major grants in process. So we feel positive about the early momentum. It's a slog to do this, but if we get this pulled off, it has a chance to really rewrite the story of Cleveland's industrial future. So that's what I've got for today. I'll stop sharing my screen and see if there was enough in there that might have provoked any thoughts or questions.
Absolutely, Brett. Thank you so much. So let's start with, with the career that you've had and the various roles that you have, what drew you to this role?
Well, after a 20-year career in business, I then had this 20-year career at the Fund for Art, or 18-year career at the Fund for Economic Future. And one of the things that became increasingly clear, the Fund for Economic Future was very much focused on inclusive growth. And in the early days, we spent a lot on innovation strategy and business retention and expansion and all these sorts of things. And then it became pretty clear that if we cared about Cleveland and if we cared about inclusive growth, we needed to care about how we were spatially oriented as a community. And we were seeing Cleveland get left behind. And so we became very enamored with the question of, okay, where do jobs locate and what do we need to do? And then it just became painfully obvious that we just didn't have sites ready to go. And kind of early days of Mayor Bibb's campaign, he was floating ideas, and we were chatting about this, and he said, that sounds like the kind of thing we can do. I said, man, if you're down for it, I'm down for it. And there we go.
So, as you and your team have started to develop this work, what are some of those barriers that you've initially run into, and how have you worked through them?
I feel like my whole job is to be a squeaky wheel. Because there's just a million reasons why things can't work, and there's a million steps along the way. So, there is money available to clean up a dirty piece of property, but to get that money, you've got to have an environmental assessment, not just one environmental assessment. You have to have phase one and a phase two. You may need to be doing engineering work. You may need to be doing, and all of these things have these requirements all along the way. And before you blink, it feels like 2 years have gone by. And so I think the biggest challenge in all this is everybody wants this to happen, but there's just a million. It's like, you remember Gulliver and the Lilliputians? It's just like, and there's a million people tying threads across your body that are getting in the way. And you just look up, and another week, another month, another quarter has passed. And there's just another gate that you have to go through. And so I have so much respect for the people who have been working there. And so my job is just to complain all day long.
And you mentioned the partners. So obviously, this work cannot happen in a vacuum. So, can you speak to how you've worked to develop these partnerships, and what additional partnerships are you seeking to advance your work?
Yeah, so that's a thank you for saying that. But yeah, it's kind of partnerships all along the way. And so uh, like, to get property, we have this magical organization in our community called the County Land Bank, which not only has a bunch of smart people who can figure out maps and figure out ways to get properties and things of that sort. They have all sorts of legal authorities where we can stand first in line at a sheriff's sale, or we can hold property on a tax-free basis, or we get kind of all these abilities to do these sorts of things. And so this couldn't happen without the County Land Bank. But then we're sitting right in the middle of neighborhoods as well. And so if we're not listening to what the community development corporations want, or if we're not highly in tune with what the city council reps want, this isn't going to go anywhere anyway. So like this 7,000 Central building, that wasn't even on my radar screen. We were looking at a bunch of different properties, but I did a ride around with Councilman Richard Starr, and as we're riding around in his car, he pulls up in front of 7,000 Central and he goes, that one. He said, you fixed that one and you got me on your team. And, sure enough, we went and found it and we got it, and it was a big deal. And then as we're cleaning up, we need these partnerships with the state. We need these partnerships with others. And then as we get closer to marketing these things and developing them, I wouldn't have guessed a year ago that Land Studios, which does all this urban design and so forth, would be somebody I would have on speed dial. But we want to do this right. And they've been just a fabulous partner in thinking about, well, in addition to the building, how could we make this a special place? And what if we put a trail through here? Or what would be the way that we could make this kind of look differently? And then, look, there's three of us here. We're not going to be able to go out and call on all the companies. Team Neo is absolutely essential to the work that we're doing. And then there's the funding partners of the Cleveland Foundation and others who are saying, look, we got to get from 50 to $100 million. Can you guys help us think about how to do that? So that's just a small pitch. And then once we start getting companies, we're going to have workforce needs. So we're starting to talk to Magnet and Ohio Means Jobs and others. And so, it really is just like this kind of whole network that has to come to ground in specific locations. Very long answer, sorry. It was a broad question.
So as you think about the sites that you see around our community, what sites are you targeting that you haven't gotten yet, or where would you like to focus?
You think I'm going to tell you that and then have somebody go out and get in front of us and run up the price? Already people have gotten wind of us, and if they think they know where we're going, it's just awful. So if you can think of a dirty building, we're probably interested in it. Or if you can think of a place that was zoned industrial, we're interested in it. And by the way, if you want to try to screw us over and on price, go ahead and try. As I said, there's 5,000 acres, and if you're going to be a jerk on your 10 acres, we got another 4,990 to look at.
Which seems a little counter to the whole partnership collaboration, but
Yeah,
we
well,
can
no,
learn
it's just
questions.
there are private people out there, and there are a lot of, as we've seen with these out-of-state landlords and things of that sort. There are some folks that are well, they're trying to make a buck, but they're preying on this. And look, we're willing, if there's somebody who's been living here and they have a piece of property, I don't begrudge them making a good return working with us. But if it's some German company that's kind of just been sitting on this thing for 30 years, I don't want them screwing us over.
So how does all of this work then play into the other physical development that's happening, economic development happening in the community and the plans that have been put into place?
Yeah. So first off, we're kind of hand in glove with what the city is doing with its economic development. As I think, as many people in this call may know, um, under Jeff Epstein and Tom McNair's leadership, they've been really building up the economic development department, and they're kind of focusing on how they do business calling and how they think about incentives and things of that sort. And so, in fact, they're just sitting right over here. We have weekly meetings where we're figuring out kind of how we're doing deals and things of that sort. And then similarly, we're constantly kind of in touch with city council and understanding what the plans are there. Um, and then we're meeting regularly with Jobs Ohio and Team Neo to say, okay, who are your strategic industries? How do we tap into that? So day before yesterday, we were meeting with the head of agriculture at Jobs Ohio to say, okay, this food hub that we're talking about, how can we tap into what we're doing? And he kind of did that. So it's there's no like master strategy, but we're trying to read what the city's doing and others are doing, and then making sure that we're the sites people.
And as you're developing this here, what other places across the country have you looked to who are doing this well that you can learn from?
The Yeah, so there's been a lot of interest in what we're doing here, and I'm proud to say that nobody else has kind of done this model yet. Um, and it is getting some attention and attraction, which is great. But we've taken tremendous inspiration from the Cincinnati Port Authority. And there's a woman there, Laura Bruner, who's like I don't know, she's the one I go and cry to every other week. And she's been a real mentor to me. And they have done some exciting work. They haven't been able to get the corpus that we have of this money from the American Rescue Plan, but they went out and issued a um, a bond that they call a patient capital note, which has got almost no interest rate, doesn't have to be paid back for 10 years, and it's a very forgiving thing. And we've spent a lot of time talking with them about how they structured their patient capital note, and they've used that for industrial redevelopment in parts of Cincinnati, and so that's pretty exciting. So it's kind of cool that two groups that are doing this well are both Ohio-based. I'm kind of the other networks that I'm involved in, Atlanta's doing some pretty cool stuff. Detroit is, but they don't have anything like what we have yet. So I'd say Cincinnati.
So as you look at this development, how might small and local businesses be involved with this work?
Well, first of all, I hope I made it very clear. We are not trying to replace the private sector. We're trying to get things ready for the private sector. So it depends on the kind of small business you are. If you're a developer, we want to be your friend. And we want to work with you. We're going to get it ready for you to go do stuff. If you are a small business that does remediation and cleanup and construction or that sort of thing, well, we'd love you to bid on work. And the ones we really love are those if you're a small business that does manufacturing or things of that sort, we want to help you expand. Let us know if you've got a property. If we don't have one, but you have what you want, we'll go out and do something bespoke to meet your needs. We want Cleveland to be a place that you say, wow, if I want to build a company in Cleveland, this is where I'm going to be. And not only will they help me with workforce and incentives and that sort of thing, they're going to find me great property.
You mentioned some of the targets that you have for the total number of acres developed and what you're hoping to reach, but what are some of those success measures along the way towards those goals?
Yeah, so we've got big long strategy with our 2025 goals. Yeah, so there is uh, ultimately, the goal is 25,000 well-paying jobs in 1,000 acres. And we are bringing that back into kind of number of industrial developers we're talking with, number of properties, how much we're doing in share of sales, the number of instruments that we have. There's a whole set of cascading measures, but our North Star is the 1,000 acres and 25,000 jobs.
And for those of us who are here on the call today, how can we support you and your team in your work?
Well, talk it up. Um, if you know of a company that is looking to grow and they're saying, I can't deal with Cleveland or whatever, have them talk to us and we can help them with those needs. And then, without knowing everything, you sent me the list of who's on this call. There's a lot of great civic organizations. We're trying to do what I call industrial placemaking. So we want to have places that are special, and so we need connections to workforce. We need ideas for innovation. We want to have good, attractive places. So if you've got thoughts as to how we can do placemaking around industry in the way we've thought about placemaking for downtowns and residential areas, kind of we're all ears for that. And we're wanting, again, to do this in an environmentally sustainable way as well. So we're talking about geothermal and solar roofs and things of that sort. And right now, I'm just waving my arms. And so we're working with consultants and others, but we want to make this kind of real. But there's three of us here, so we're mostly working with and through others.
Well, Brad, we thank you and your team for the work that you are doing to bring this to our community and such a needed thing for Cleveland to continue to move forward. So thank you for sharing your time and your work with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank everybody for giving this a listen.